Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Marco. I am the host of Unscripted with Marco, the podcast, and this is a safe space. I like to call this space the porch because if you remember where I grew up, on the east side of Cleveland, Ohio, the porch was a sacred space. You could ask mom, you could ask anybody about anything on the porch. And you would get those type of wisdom moments, those wisdom answers. So I'm looking forward to having these conversations and seeing what comes out of them. This is the first of many, and I think it's gonna be cool. I think it's gonna be good. But I want to tap y'all in a little bit to my why, and I hope you are able to identify your why through this. Again, this is called Unscripted with Marco. I ain't gonna front you. I got a few notes because I want to make sure that I am able to hit on everything that I want to touch on, that I feel like will be good for us to discuss and to talk about. So, if you have not subscribed on Facebook, on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the share it with somebody who you think will be able to benefit from this information. If you're on Apple or Spotify, I just ask that you continue to share it. If you see this clip on Instagram, please do share it around. Let everybody know kind of what's going on because I think we're all in this kind of space right now where many of us are trying to identify our why. Life right now is loud. It's loud. I don't even really have to tell you all that's going on in the world for you to already know. All you got to do is pick up your phone and look at Instagram or look at Facebook or Twitter or whatever you got. Look at it and you'll see a lot of what's going on. So I don't want you to have to think about things like that right now. But what I do want to make sure I emphasize is I know that people are searching for their why because life is loud, but your meaning is quiet. There are notifications everywhere. Everybody got an opinion. Advice is everywhere, but there are certain things that are missing, and that is clarity, that's purpose, and that's direction. All of that is missing, and that's why this podcast exists. Um, at first, I have always been encouraged to do this. My wife, for starters, saw something that I did not initially see, and she's the one that kind of set this thing into motion. So, Bree, I love you. I appreciate what you have done to kind of push me into this space. But not to mention, I had some other people whose names I'm not going to call out at this moment, but they have an ear, and I trust their opinion when it comes to things like this. Uh, and they know that although I am a preacher, I'm a pastor, I have an earned doctorate degree. They know that I'm very much still grounded outside of all of that. That never has defined me. It doesn't really shape me, but it does and has a way of shaping my thinking. But I'm not like so stuck into that thinking that would make people really not want to listen to anything that I have to say. So I didn't start Unscripted with Marco because the world needed content. I started because I kept meeting people who felt unseen, unsure, and unheard, but yet still had a glimmer of hope. There were people who didn't walk away from the faith because they hated it. They walked away because there was no room for their questions. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to answer all of your questions. I'm not, here to say that. But I do hope to bring some clarity to some of the things and some of the pitfalls that we all face because I'm not perfect. I've had my share of ups and downs, but at some point I realized that my silence was no longer an option and that my voice is not about ego, but is more about responsibility. So today, I want to hope that I help you identify with your why and not the Instagram version of your why or what your resume or what your bio says about you. I would hope that we can really begin to break some things down and help us figure out our why, that kind of why that sustains you when there are no claps because everybody ain't gonna clap. I've literally found out through this whole process of talking about the podcast and starting the podcast uh, that most of the support that I will see will come from people who do not follow me yet. And right now, if I'm honest, I think on Facebook, I probably got 3,000, 4,000 friends, followers, like another 1,500 on Instagram and all of that. But those won't be the initial ones that will support me. It will be people like you who found this video somewhere and you just so happen to be searching for your meaning of why. And I want to tell you just three quick things that will help you identify your why. Number one, your why shows up where your silence starts to feel irresponsible. Hence why we're here now. I didn't feel called to start a podcast because it sounded cool. I felt uneasy starting it. This has been in the works for months, but here we are now. But it's just something that grabbed me that wouldn't let me go. And that's usually the first sign, the first indication of your why, because your why isn't always loud, but it's very persistent. When I initially went into ministry, it was something that literally just would not let me go. It was like an internal battle, an internal tension that says that if I don't speak up, then something is missing. And the world needs me to add my voice, to add my experience to this moment. So for me, it wasn't watching, what the world is doing and what the culture is doing. For me, it was watching people literally deconstruct quietly and nobody saying anything to them. It's not that they were angry. I think people are just tired of pretending. We have to leave the house and put on these facades and all of this kind of stuff. And we are really just honestly trying to figure everything out the same way everybody else is trying to figure it out. But many people don't get that grace to figure it out because if you're like me, you live your life in public and you're literally just trying to figure some things out at the same time, trying to do everything for everybody else. And, I think it comes a practical moment where we have to ask ourselves, is that what do I keep noticing that other people seem to ignore? Like, where do I feel discomfort if I don't say anything? These are things that will trigger you back to your why. And it's not random. That's literally responsibility knocking. And we have to take note of that. Number two is your life and your why is at the intersection of your pain and your perspective. I'll be totally honest and transparent. I mean, this is unscripted. Part of this was birthed out of pain. Um, I lost my mother in November of 2025. And, I had a different perspective to pain. My pastor wrote a book called Preaching Funerals in the Black Church, Bringing Perspective to Pain. And I needed some perspective to my pain. And I wasn't finding it. And I didn't know who to talk to. I am an advocate of therapy and Jesus. I am a pastor that goes to therapy regularly, but there was some pain in my life that I really needed to bring to perspective. And I want to tell you that your story is not a liability, it's a lens. It was designed and created for this exact moment. So why should you be quiet about your own story? Instead, ask yourself, what happens if I stay quiet too long? It didn't come to this space untouched. I came with grief. I come with leadership fatigue. I come with tension. I've come with unanswered questions. But I also come with language and insight and the ability to translate complexity into clarity. That's the intersection where most of our lives are, not just what hurt you, but what you learned because it hurt. So your why isn't about relieving pain, it's about redeeming it. It's about saying what almost broke me might be the thing that builds somebody else. So ask yourself, what truth did I have to learn the hard way so that I can pass it along to somebody else? And they may not have it as hard as I have it because they'll have somebody else that they can lean on, which is myself. So your pain doesn't disqualify you, it literally trains you. And the other thing that I want to make sure that I mention is your why becomes clear when impact matters more than applause. Because I've already said at the outset of this that there are more people that are supporting this effort, this endeavor, or this iteration of my life that have known me forever, but have not clicked like and click share, haven't done none of that. But there are just random strangers in shorts that I've shared or reels that I've shared that have galvanized around what's happening and what I'm doing. And it's allowed me to see that, man, the biggest applause is not really coming from the people that I know, it's coming from the people that I don't know. But then I have to ask myself, what can I do to make sure that, number one, I'm clear about what I'm doing, but also that my impact matters more than the applause, because that's here how I knew this podcast was necessary. And this very first episode, this first recording, is because I stopped caring who approved and start caring about who it helped. The way that I go into Sunday mornings, my sermons and our worship experience here in Memphis is, if I can just help one person with my sermon, then I've done my job. When your why is real, the matrix and the analytics become secondary to your meaning, because you don't need everybody understand what you're doing. You just need the right person to find you and to find what you're doing, because ultimately it's for them. It may not be for everybody else. Every sermon, every TED talk, every speech, every podcast you hear is not going to be for everybody. And this podcast here, I can tell you now, it's not about convincing people to believe. It's about helping some people to breathe again, to help some people feel seen, to help some people feel heard, to help some people know that they're not going through life and their experience by themselves. And for me, that is the notion of allowing people to trust themselves again. Because if you're anything like me and you get caught up in your head too much, you'll start to think that you're crazy. You'll start to think that stuff is going on that's really not going on, and you don't know how to find your way in or out this situation, and you are literally just trying to figure it out. But when you step into your why, you will realize that your impact is far greater than your image. I don't care how I look right now. Everything is not perfect. I appreciate Eastside Golf for the sweatshirt and all of the things, and and all of the the clothes and the watches and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, but all of that stuff does not matter if I'm not helping nobody else. Your why sits at the intersection of your purpose and who you are willing to help. So clarity comes with impact, and it does not come with applause. So, to bring this all back full circle in this very short first episode, is I started this podcast because my why outgrew my comfort. Because it was no longer about me, it was about helping somebody else feel seen, feel heard, and feel appreciated. And maybe that's where you are too. You're not trying to be famous, you're just trying to be faithful to what you know and give out to the world, to the zeitgeist, what you're supposed to contribute. So your why is not hiding, it's being tapped into right now. It's tapping you on the shoulder while you listen to this podcast right now. So the question isn't, do you have one? The real question is, will you honor it? That's three quick reasons on how you can identify your why. So, if this episode gave you language to something that you've been feeling that you could not name, do me a favor and go back, listen to it again, because clarity does not always come the first time you hear something. Sometimes it comes and it allows you and impacts you when you're ready to hear it. So I pray that this episode has helped you. I pray that it has put some framework around you identifying your why. And I hope that you will share it with somebody else. This is Unscripted with Marco, a space for honest conversation, thoughtful reflection, and meaning beyond the noise. I hope that this helps you, and I hope to see you back here later. Peace.